fundraising drives. Well, you're in luck. This week, our primetime programming from 6 to 10 p.m. will air uninterrupted as always. But we still need your help to reach our fundraising goals. Call 773-588-1111 or go to WTTW.com. Join us at whatever level is comfortable, $5, $10, $15 a month. Your ongoing monthly gift can bring great member benefits like Passport, the PBS streaming service, which you can use to stream and binge hours of your favorite programs anytime, anywhere. Call 773-588-1111 or go to WTTW.com to become a member now. Thank you.
Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by viewers like you and by the following.
This is our great-grandfather who had a dream in 1945 to open a family business in his name. This is our grandfather who expanded on that dream, bringing custom furniture to Chicago. This is our father and his brothers who grew that dream into the 10 showrooms here today. This is us, 4 sisters who want to make the generations before us proud while making Chicago homes beautiful. Since 1945, this is Smith.
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center. Programming that enriches lives on WTTW is made possible in part by the estate of WTTW's longtime trustee, Marv Goldsmith.
Hey, I'm Dave, and you're watching WTTW.
This evening's presentation of Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by a grant from the William F. O'Connor Foundation in memory of Billy O'Connor.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this PBS NewsHour special live coverage of President Biden's address to the nation. I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight, we mark a number of firsts. It has been 1 year since COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, and it's hard to comprehend all the ways our lives have changed. More than 530,000 Americans have died, a staggering number, affecting millions of American families. President Biden's first legislative victory became law when he signed it today. And just moments from now, he is expected to lay out how the American Rescue Plan will provide economic relief, especially to lower and middle income households. He will also look forward and make several announcements, including that every adult American will be eligible for a vaccine by May 1st. We'll be watching this first televised address to the nation from the White House by the president with our Yamiche Alcindor and our Lisa Desjardins. Hello to both of you. We are just seconds away, we're told, from President Biden speaking from the Oval Office. But Yamiche, in the few seconds we have, the president is going to be trying to turn our attention to the future.
That's right. He's going to be talking about how we can make it through this pandemic. He's going to be talking about putting the country on a path toward normalcy by July 4th. That doesn't mean big concerts, but it could be small gatherings. He's going to be calling out hate crimes against Asian Americans. He's also going to be talking about a new website that the country is going to be launching for vaccines.
All right, the President of the United States in the East Room of the White House, President Biden.
Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about where we are as we mark 1 year since everything stopped because of this pandemic. A year ago, we were hit with a virus that was met with silence and spread unchecked. Denials for days, weeks, then months. That led to more deaths, more infections, more stress, and more loneliness. Photos and videos from 2019 feel like they were taken in another era, the last vacation. the last birthday with friends, the last holiday with extended family. While it was different for everyone, we all lost something, a collective suffering, a collective sacrifice, a year filled with the loss of life and the loss of living for all of us. But in the loss, we saw how much there was to gain in appreciation, respect, and gratitude. Finding light in the darkness is a very American thing to do. In fact, it may be the most American thing we do. And that's what we've done. We've seen frontline and essential workers risking their lives, sometimes losing them, to save and help others. Researchers and scientists racing for a vaccine. And so many of you, as Hemingway wrote, being strong in all the broken places. I know it's been hard. I truly know. As I've told you before, I carry a card in my pocket with the number of Americans who have died from COVID to date. It's on the back of my schedule. As of now, total deaths in America, 527,726. That's more deaths than in World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and 9/11 combined. There were husbands, wives, sons and daughters, grandparents, friends, neighbors, young and old. They leave behind loved ones, unable to truly grieve or to heal, even to have a funeral. But I'm also thinking about everyone else who lost this past year to natural causes, by cruel fate of accident or other disease. They too died alone. They too leave behind loved ones who are hurting badly. You know, you've often heard me say before, I talk about the longest walk any parent can make is up a short flight of stairs to his child's bedroom to say, I'm sorry, but I lost my job. I can't be here anymore. Like my dad told me when he lost his job in Scranton. So many of you have had to make that same walk this past year. You lost your job. You closed your business. Facing eviction, homelessness, hunger, a loss of control, maybe worst of all, a loss of hope. Watching a generation of children who may be set back up to a year or more because they've not been in school because of their loss of learning. It's the details of life that matter the most. And we miss those details, the big details and the small moments. Weddings, birthdays, graduations, all the things that needed to happen, but didn't. The first date, the family reunions, the Sunday night rituals. It's all has exacted a terrible cost on the psyche of so many of us. For we are fundamentally a people who want to be with others, to talk, to laugh, to hug, to hold one another. But this virus has kept us apart. Grandparents haven't seen their children or grandchildren. Parents haven't seen their kids. Kids haven't seen their friends. The things we used to do that always filled us with joy have become things we couldn't do and broke our hearts. Too often, we've turned against one another. A mask, the easiest thing to do to save lives. Sometimes it divides us. States pitted against one another instead of working with each other. Vicious hate crimes against Asian Americans who've been attacked, harassed, blamed, and scapegoated. At this very moment, so many of them are fellow Americans. They're on the front lines of this pandemic trying to save lives. And still, they're forced to live in fear for their lives just walking down streets in America. It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop. Look, we know what we need to do to beat this virus. Tell the truth. Follow the scientists and the science. Work together. Put trust and faith in our government to fulfill its most important function, which is protecting the American people. No function more important. We need to remember the government isn't some foreign force in a distant capital. No, it's us, all of us. We, the people. For you and I, that America thrives when we give our hearts, when we turn our hands to common purpose. And right now, my friends, we're doing just that. And I have to say, as your president, I'm grateful to you. Last summer, I was in Philadelphia and I met a small business owner, a woman. I asked her, I said, "What do you need most?" I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, looking me in the eye, she said, "I just want the truth. The truth. Just tell me the truth." Think of that. My fellow Americans, you're owed nothing less than the truth. And for all of you asking when things will get back to normal, here is the truth. The only way to get our lives back, to get our economy back on track, is to beat the virus. You've been hearing me say that for while I was running and the last 50 days I've been president. But this is one of the most complex operations we've ever undertaken as a nation in a long time. That's why I'm using every power I have as President of the United States to put us on a war footing to get the job done. Sounds like hyperbole, but I mean it, a war footing. And thank God we're making some real progress now. In my first full day in office, I outlined for you a comprehensive strategy to beat this pandemic. We've spent every day since attempting to carry it out. 2 months ago, this country didn't have nearly enough vaccine supply to vaccinate all or ever near all of the American public. But soon we will. We've been working with vaccine manufacturers, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, to manufacture and purchase hundreds of millions of doses of these 3 safe, effective vaccines. And now, at the direction and with the assistance of my administration, Johnson & Johnson is working together with a competitor, Merck, to speed up and increase the capacity to manufacture new Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is one shot. In fact, just yesterday, I announced, and I met with the CEOs of both companies, I announced our plan to buy an additional 100 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccines. These 2 companies, competitors, have come together for the good of the nation, and they should be applauded for it. It's truly a national effort, just like we saw during World War II. Now, because of all the work we've done, we'll have enough vaccine supply for all adults in America by the end of May. That's months ahead of schedule. And we're mobilizing thousands of vaccinators to put the vaccine in one's arm, calling active duty military, FEMA, retired doctors and nurses, administrators, and those to administer the shots. And we've been creating more places to get the shots. We've made it possible for you to get a vaccine at nearly any one of 10,000 pharmacies across the country, just like you get your flu shot. We're also working with governors and mayors in red states and blue states to set up and support nearly 600 federally supported vaccination centers that administers hundreds of thousands of shots per day. You can drive up to a stadium or a large parking lot, get your shot, never leave your car, and drive home in less than an hour. We've been sending vaccines to hundreds of community health centers all across America, located in underserved areas. And we've been deploying, and we will deploy more mobile vehicles and pop-up clinics to meet you where you live, so those who are least able to get the vaccine are able to get it. We continue to work on making at-home testing available. And we've been focused on serving people in the hardest-hit communities of this pandemic: Black, Latino, Native American, and rural communities. So what does all this add up to? When I took office 50 days ago, only 8% of the Americans, after months, only 8% of those over the age of 65 had gotten their first vaccination. Today, that number is 65%. Just 14% of Americans over the age of 75 50 days ago had gotten their first shot. Today, that number is well over 70%. With new guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, that came out on Monday, it means simply this: millions and millions of grandparents who went months without being able to hug their grandkids can now do so. And the more people are fully vaccinated, the CD will continue to provide additional guidance on what you can do in the workplace, places of worship with your friends, as well as travel. When I came into office, you may recall, I set a goal that many of you said was kind of way over the top. I said I intended to get 100 million shots in people's arms in my first 100 days in office. Tonight, I can say we're not only going to meet that goal, we're going to beat that goal, because we're actually on track to reach this goal of 100 million shots in arms on my 60th day in office. No other country in the world has done this. None. And I want to talk about the next steps we're thinking about. First, tonight, I'm announcing that I will direct all states, tribes, and territories to make all adults, people 18 and over, eligible to be vaccinated no later than May 1. Let me say that again. All adult Americans will be eligible to get a vaccine no later than May 1. That's much earlier than expected. And let me be clear. That doesn't mean everyone's going to have that shot immediately, but it means you'll be able to get in line beginning May 1. Every adult will be eligible to get their shot. And to do this, we're going to go from 1 million shots a day that I promised in December, before I was sworn in, to beating our current pace of 2 million shots a day, outpacing the rest of the world. Secondly, at the time when every adult is eligible in May, we will launch, with our partners, new tools to make it easier for you to find the vaccine and where to get the shot, including a new website that will help you first find the place to get vaccinated and the one nearest you. No more searching day and night for an appointment for you and your loved ones. Thirdly, with the passage of the American Rescue Plan, and I thank again the House and Senate for passing it, and my announcement last month of a plan to vaccinate teachers and school staff, including bus drivers, we can accelerate massive nationwide effort to reopen our schools safely and meet my goal that I stated at the same time, about 100 million shots, of opening a majority of K through 8 schools in my first 100 days in office. This is going to be the #1 priority of my new Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Fourth, in the coming weeks, we will issue further guidance on what you can and cannot do once fully vaccinated, to lessen the confusion, to keep people safe, and encourage more people to get vaccinated. And finally, fifth, and maybe most importantly, I promise I will do everything in my power. I will not relent until we beat this virus. But I need you, the American people. I need you. I need every American to do their part. And that's not hyperbole. I need you. I need you to get vaccinated when it's your turn and when you can find an opportunity. And to help your family, your friends, your neighbors get vaccinated as well. Because here's the point. If we do all this, if we do our part, if we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout and a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day. That doesn't mean large events with lots of people together, but it does mean small groups will be able to get together. After this long, hard year, that will make this Independence Day something truly special, where we not only mark our independence as a nation, but we begin to mark our independence from this virus. But to get there, we can't let our guard down. This fight is far from over. As I told the woman in Pennsylvania, I'll tell you the truth. On July 4th, with your loved ones, is the goal. But a lot can happen. Conditions can change. The scientists have made clear that things may get worse again as new variants of the virus spread. And we've got work to do to ensure that everyone has confidence in the safety and effectiveness of all 3 vaccines. So my message to you is this. Listen to Dr. Fauci, one of the most distinguished and trusted voices in the world. He's assured us the vaccines are safe. They underwent rigorous scientific review. I know they're safe. Vice President Harris and I know they're safe. That's why we got the vaccine publicly in front of cameras, so for the world to see, so you could see us do it. The First Lady and the Second Gentleman also got vaccinated. Talk to your family, friends, your neighbors, the people you know best who've gotten the vaccine. We need everyone to get vaccinated. We need everyone to keep washing their hands, stay socially distanced, and keep wearing the mask as recommended by the CDC. Because even if we devote every resource we have, beating this virus and getting back to normal depends on national unity. And national unity isn't just how politics and politicians vote in Washington, or what the loudest voices say on cable or online. Unity is what we do together as fellow Americans. Because if we don't stay vigilant and the conditions change, then we may have to reinstate restrictions to get back on track. And please, we don't want to do that again. We've made so much progress. This is not the time to let up. Just as we were emerging from a dark winter into a hopeful spring and summer is not the time to not stick with the rules. I'll close with this. We've lost so much over the last year. We've lost family and friends. We've lost businesses and dreams we spent years building. We've lost time with each other. And our children have lost so much time with their friends, time with their schools. No graduation ceremonies this spring. No graduations from college, high school, moving up ceremonies. You know, and there's something else we lost. We lost faith in whether our government and our democracy can deliver on really hard things for the American people. But as I stand here tonight, we're proving once again something I've said time and time again, to probably tired of hearing me say it. I say it to foreign leaders and domestic alike. It's never, ever a good bet to bet against the American people. America is coming back. The development, manufacture, and distribution of vaccines in record time is a true miracle of science. It's one of the most extraordinary achievements any country has ever accomplished. And we also just saw the Perseverance rover land on Mars. Stunning images of our dreams that are now a reality. Another example of the extraordinary American ingenuity, commitment, and belief in science and one another. And today, I signed into law the American Rescue Plan, an historic piece of legislation that delivers immediate relief to millions of people, includes $1,400 in direct rescue checks, payments. That means a typical family of 4 earning about $110,000 will get checks for $5,600 deposited if they have direct deposit or in a check, a treasury check. It extends unemployment benefits. It helps small businesses. It lowers health care premiums for many. It provides food and nutrition, keeps families in their homes. And it will cut child poverty in this country in half, according to the experts. And it funds all the steps I've just described to beat the virus and create millions of jobs. In the coming weeks and months, I'll be traveling along with the First Lady, the Vice President, the Second Gentleman, members of my cabinet, to speak directly to you, to tell you the truth about how the American Rescue Plan meets the moment. And if it fails at any pace, I will acknowledge that it failed, but it will not. About how after long, dark years, one whole year, there is hope and light of better days ahead. If we all do our part, this country will be vaccinated soon. Our economy will be on the mend. Our kids will be back in school. And we'll have proven once again that this country can do anything, hard things, big things, important things. Over a year ago, no one could have imagined what we were about to go through. But now, we're coming through it. And it's a shared experience that binds us together as a nation. We are bound together by the loss and the pain of the days that have gone by. We're also bound together by the hope and the possibilities of the days in front of us. My fervent prayer for our country is that after all we've been through, we'll come together as one people, one nation, one America. I believe we can and we will. We're seizing this moment. And history, I believe, will record. We faced and overcame one of the toughest and darkest periods in this nation's history. Darkest we've ever known. I promise you, we'll come out stronger with a renewed faith in ourselves, a renewed commitment to one another, to our communities and to our country. This is the United States of America. And there's nothing, from the bottom of my heart I believe this, there's nothing we can't do when we do it together. So God bless you all. And please, God, give solace to all those people who lost someone. And may God protect our troops. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I look forward to seeing you.
President Biden, do you consider this a new phase of the pandemic?
President Biden mourning and celebrating and challenging Americans all at the same time. And that concludes our NewsHour special live coverage of President Biden's first address to the nation from the White House. Please stay with us online and join us again for the NewsHour tomorrow evening. I'm Judy Woodruff. From all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you. Please stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone watching the NewsHour special coverage of President Biden's address. Welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz here in our Northwest Side studio.
And I'm Brandis Friedman, reporting live in Chicago's Beverly neighborhood.
On the show tonight.
Around here, the parade is a season.
St. Patrick's Day parades are canceled again this year. How Chicago's Beverly neighborhood is still celebrating the holiday. The pandemic has presented mental health challenges for many, but now there's a new source of anxiety, the prospect of returning to work.
I'm Angel Ito, and tonight I'll be taking you to a new exhibit in Elmhurst that's exploring segregation within the Chicago area.
And Jeffrey Bayer on Chicago's old passenger rail stations in this week's Ask Jeffrey. First off tonight, neighbors in one far south side Chicago community say the pandemic's biggest impact on their livelihood has been economic. The community of Beverly is about 16 miles from downtown and known for being integrated and home to lots of firefighters and police officers, but it's also known for being home to the city's South Side Irish Parade, one of the biggest outside of Dublin. For the second year in a row, that celebration has been put on hold. And as part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series, Brandis Friedman spent the day in Beverly along with producer Marissa Nelson. Brandis now joins us with more. Brandis.
In Paris, we're standing outside Givens Irish Castle. It's at the corner of 103rd and Longwood here in Beverly. And it's considered Chicago's only castle built in the mid-1880s. And it is literally a physical testament to the impact of the Irish community here in Beverly, Paris. As you said, the annual Southside Irish Parade here can bring up to 500,000 people. Now, that's at its peak, of course. This is the second year in a row, though, that the parade has been canceled because of the pandemic. And it started, obviously, just a year ago, as we've been hearing all evening. It travels down Western Avenue, and organizers say it attracts more than 100 floats, as well as marching bands, civic organizations, unions, and more. Now, you're looking at a little bit of video from the parade committee from one of its previous parades. Folks here say that the parade took about a 2-year hiatus about a decade ago because it had gotten so big with folks coming from far outside of town to catch it. It's been retooled since then to be a more family-friendly event until the pandemic put it to a halt yet again.
It's a real big deal. You know, the parade is one day, but around here the parade is a season. It lasts for weeks. You know, people get excited. The parade is like a Christmas morning and your birthday, all in the same day.
So this year, parade organizers have pivoted to a Shamrock Our Block house decorating competition, maybe similar to the house floats you might have heard about in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. The committee sells yard signs to raise money to purchase gift certificates from local businesses which have lost revenue. Winners of the competition receive those gift certificates, giving businesses a bit of a revenue injection.
We've had submissions come in for the contest, and then they send in another one because they added on to it, and they've added on to more decorations, and they get some ideas driving around the neighborhood. So it's really kind of starting to really grow as we ramp up here towards what would be called Parade Day.
Now, earlier you heard one of the parade co-chairs explain that the parade is a season. It's actually weeks of revenue generation for businesses in the area. One of them is Barney Callahan's on Western, where patrons could watch the parade walk right by. The bar has been under its current ownership for more than 30 years, and owners say between two St. Patrick's Days and the Christmas holiday, it's had to be closed for its busiest times of the year. Even now, though it has a capacity of almost 250 people, the city's mitigation strategies limit capacity to just 50 people.
It's been confusing. It's taught us a lot. We've all been trying to reinvent ourselves many times over because the rules kept changing and so rapidly, and it's tough to keep staff on and then get them back on short notice, so it's just been difficult.
And another business that's felt the impact is the Beverly Arts Center. Now, it is an institution in this community, offering classes, live music, dance, theater performances, as well as a gallery showcasing regional arts. Now, Paris, you visited here late March last year as part of our COVID Across Chicago series, and staff here say that since then it has been a struggle. Of course, they are operating at reduced capacity as well, but at times over this past year, it's been closed entirely, meaning an 80% drop in participation. And as summer approaches, though, the center plans more outdoor performances and events, and as more people are getting vaccinated, they're beginning to see some light at the end of a very long and dark tunnel.
We've seen spring session enrollment, which starts in just a couple of weeks, much better than we have in the winter and fall and summer sessions since the pandemic hit. So we know that people are kind of ready to be out and engaging in the community again and engaging in creating art.
And to give you a sense of how this community is being impacted by the virus itself, COVID-19 rates for a couple of the Beverly zip codes have fallen below the city's positivity rate of 2.8%. That's for two of them. The COVID rates stand at 1.5 and 1.7%, but it's at 3.8% in the 60655 zip code. And a family care physician at Advocate Healthcare System, which has several locations in Beverly, says that he does spend a lot of time answering questions for people who are hesitant to get the vaccine.
2.6 million people have died from the virus. 100 million people have been exposed to it. But this is the tricky part. 1 out of 3 people who've been exposed, a lot of them people are still having symptoms, right? So if you're still having symptoms and all these people have perished, then you say, well, maybe a better approach is to be vaccinated, where literally, if you look at the data, nobody's died from the vaccination itself.
Now, another fun fact about this community, Paris, it's actually also known as Beverly Hills. No, not like the one in LA, but because this is one of the few places in the city that can be considered hilly. We're actually standing on one of those hills right now. Now, coming up later on, we're going to hear from 19th Ward Alderman Matt O'Shea about some of the mail delivery problems this community is experiencing and more. But for now, Paris, we'll send it back to you.
Longwood Drive, I know it well. All right, thank you, Brandis. A year ago today, the World Health Organization declared the spread of the COVID-19 virus a global pandemic, and our world changed. Widespread mental health issues induced by the pandemic and social isolation have no doubt taken their toll. And now there appears to be a light at the end of the tunnel with improving vaccination rates, but clinicians warn a new anxiety is settling in, that of returning to work. Joining us now to discuss that anxiety and ways to cope is Dr. Aderonke Peterson, a mental health specialist at Northwestern Medicine's Feinberg School of Medicine, where she is an instructor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences. Dr. Peterson, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right, so we know that there has been widespread anxiety and depression due to multiple facets of this pandemic. What about back to work anxiety? Are you seeing that?
Absolutely. I think, if we were talking about a change in behavior over the course of a week or 2 weeks, that's one thing. But we're talking about the fact that we've been asked multiple times in multiple ways to change our behavior over the span of this past year. And that definitely, has an impact on each of us in different ways, but as a collective community. And so I think one of the important things that people, should keep in mind in this time is that if you're feeling anxious about returning to, some semblance of normalcy as more and more people are vaccinated, if you're feeling uneasy about it or uncomfortable with it, despite even knowing logically that, potentially, right, it's safe according to the CDC, to interact with another person indoors who's fully vaccinated 2 weeks out. But despite all of those things, I think there might be some unease that people might have just because of the length of all of this and the impact of all of it.
And we know that organizations are starting to discuss what their plans are going to be. Metra and the Building Owners and Managers Association today had a back to work promotional event. Is it just fear of the vaccine, or is there a general social anxiety that comes with being isolated for so long?
I think it's multifaceted. I think there are many things at play, and I think some of it is individual in terms of what are all of the factors that might be playing into the decisions and feelings, each person might be having. For example, a Pew Research study, showed that up to 30% of Americans are unwilling to be vaccinated. And I think some people might be living with someone who, is choosing not to get vaccinated for different reasons. And so that's just one example of the many ways in which that decision to return to work, while it might seem, well, if we're all vaccinated, at work, it's going to be fine. I think a lot of people are weighing out a number of different things on the one hand from a practical standpoint, but on the other hand, just from a standpoint of, we're asking our bodies to do something we've been telling our bodies not to do for a whole year.
So what is your advice to patients that come in and say they feel this anxiety, they're torn about the decision to go back to work, they're a little bit anxious about being around people, being in social situations? What do you tell them, and what's your advice for organizations as well?
I'll start with organizations. I think it's really important that organizations, have the room to accommodate people given their specific needs, from a physical standpoint, from a health standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint, that organizations really should try and be patient with their staff as they're calling them back to come to, physical geographic locations. On the other hand, I think, as people are making these decisions to go back to, their workspaces, I think it's important to apply what I call exposure therapy, as we can maybe adapt it a little to what people can do practically, which is return to your activities in doses. So if instead of going straight to, a group of people who are fully vaccinated 2 weeks out indoors, you might choose to have a one-on-one meeting with someone. It's also okay to say things like, I know logically that we're safe because we're both fully vaccinated 2 weeks out. But if you want to keep your mask on the first time you get out, to spend some time with someone indoors again, that's okay. I think it's important for us to be patient with ourselves and to be patient with those around us as we navigate this, not just from a logical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, I think it is going to take a long time to truly feel comfortable being in close contact with someone with your mask off. Dr. Peterson, I want to ask you about anxiety and depression, specifically in communities of color, because we know those communities have been the hardest hit. We know that economically they've struggled, especially lots of people working in essential industries. What have you seen in your practice?
I'm so glad you asked that question. When we talk about over 500 people have lost their lives, from this virus, I like to point out that we're talking about over 500,000 families. And then when we talk about the disproportionate impact on Black and Brown communities, I also like to point out that that's, grieving families. The economic impact, like you pointed out. And I think one of the things I study is stigma and mental health. So one of the things I'm trying to encourage, my patients, the community to keep in mind is that we want to put away right now as best as we can that hesitation to get help, to get support when we need it, and really seek out, that help, whether it's short-term therapy or talking to, your physician about getting additional supports and helps in the community. I think it's really important that we engage with that, especially for those of us who have been disproportionately impacted in certain communities, like the Black community.
Does that stigma still exist, and does it exist more in communities of color, that stigma of admitting you need help, you have a problem?
For various reasons, various very valid reasons, including things like medical mistrust, that we, I think, have talked about as a society because of COVID-19. I think that there is greater stigma, and studies do show that there is greater stigma towards mental illness in the Black community. But again, that is multi-pronged because of things like discrimination and medical mistrust, and just feeling not fully at ease in systems that might continue and do continue to perpetuate racism.
All right, Dr. Adoranke Peterson, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And a week from today, we'll have a 1-hour special marking 1 year of COVID-19 shutdowns in Illinois. We'll share insights from public health and government officials, hear from business owners, and shine a light on racial and ethnic disparities brought on by the pandemic. Again, that's a week from tonight here on WTTW. And now we check back in with Brandis Friedman. She spent the day reporting in Beverly on Chicago's southwest side as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Brandis, you got a special guest.
I do have a special guest, Paris. Right now I'm joined by 19th Ward Alderman Matt O'Shea. That includes Beverly. Alderman, let's start with the mail delivery problems. You sponsored a resolution calling for Postmaster Wanda Prater's resignation because of the significant mail issues. Has it gotten any better?
Not really. We continue to see route after route throughout our community not receiving mail for days at a time, weeks at a time. It's really problematic, and we haven't seen that much of an improvement.
What have your residents told you about how that's impacting them?
I mean, the biggest thing is so many of our senior citizens receive medication through the mail, and if they're not getting their medication, that's problematic. You call the post office or you go up there and you're treated poorly. The frustration level's at an all-time high, and as an alderman, I don't have the authority. You know, this is a federal office, and so trying to work with our partners in Washington to try to get this addressed, and then also, you know, legislation you had mentioned.
Now, earlier today or earlier during the broadcast, you heard us report about the South Side Parade, among one of the first events to have been canceled last year. It is canceled again this year. How significant, how detrimental is that cancellation for residents?
It's devastating. You know, the Southside Irish Parade in our community, it's about a 2-week event. That is people out in supporting restaurants and bars. That's people out spending money decorating their home. That is people out and about. It's a huge shot in the arm for the business community over that 2-week period, and to not have it now 2 years in a row. But it's also it's the start of spring. You know, we see our neighbors for the first time, and after this horrible year we've all been through, we were hoping that we would have been far enough and turning the corner to be able to celebrate. But unfortunately, because it's such a big event, you know, we have 100,000 people out now, shoulder to shoulder in the street. It was the right decision.
So city officials say a final decision on some other, you know, summer events like Taste of Chicago, the Air and Water Show, that those are coming down. Are you hopeful that, you know, we'll have something like a summer close to normal?
Absolutely. We see our numbers to continue to come down, and as we continue to roll out the vaccine, I'm hopeful that we can get back to closer to normal activity. And as you mentioned, those citywide activities, that's what draws people to our city. That's what puts people in restaurants and hotels downtown, and we just need that for our own selves.
Okay, and in just a few seconds left, how would you say the vaccine rollout is going in your wards?
I've been frustrated. Many of my senior citizens cannot obtain the vaccine. I'm inundated each and every day with phone calls and emails. People, you know, Alderman, my 83-year-old father can't get the vaccine. You know, Alderman, my mother lives with me. I can't get her vaccinated, and you know, I'm powerless other than to give them the options. But
yeah, some frustration. Sorry to cut you off, but our thanks to 19th Ward Alderman Matt O'Shea. Paris, we'll be back in just a little bit to wrap things up with you.
All right, Brandis, thank you very much. And up next, a new exhibit at Elmhurst uses images of Dr. King to push forward the conversation on fair housing. But first, a look at the weather. A new exhibit at the Elmhurst Art Museum is using photography to explore Chicago's fair housing history, featuring rare color photos of Dr. Martin Luther King during the Chicago Freedom Movement. Arts correspondent Angel Ito shares more.
These rare color images of Dr. King mark his time in Chicago in the 1960s. They were captured by Wheaton-based photographer Bernard Klania.
They say that a photograph is worth 1,000 words. I think that's true.
Klania's work in civil rights began during his time as a priest when he responded to Dr. King's call for clergy in Selma, Alabama. He then went on to capture Dr. King during the Chicago Freedom Movement, a protest against discriminatory housing practices. Those images are now on display at the Elmhurst Art Museum's new exhibit, In Focus.
I was surprised and even shocked at the violent response to Dr. King. In my naivete, I never realized that there would be so much anger against him for doing what's right. So I was able to document that, and at times I was in the demonstrations, at times I was photographing, and in both cases I realized how divided we are and were in Chicago and in the nation.
From redlining to blockbusting to white flight, the exhibit also features statistics that highlight the areas most impacted by these discriminatory housing practices.
I would like to say that everything has changed, but everything has not changed. There's still discrimination in housing. There's still segregation. Because of that discrimination, a vast difference in the wealth of people of color as opposed to white Americans. And that means that they have less to leave to their children.
The exhibit also explores the current and future state of fair housing, as depicted in images by photographer Vashawn Jordan Jr.
Every race is separated by their own neighborhoods, but for the protest, people were coming from south to north, east to west. Everyone was coming together to fight for this. I think people understood if the protest started off peacefully and was derailed by outside agitators, they always came with that idea of peace and unity. When we look back at what Dr. King's messaging was, he wanted people to stay peaceful and get their message across without violence.
One of the exhibition's many takeaways is that fair housing is not just a city issue. It affects suburban communities as well.
We're hoping that people will understand is the depth of this issue everywhere. We're hoping that soul-stirring photographs of these photographers will carry some of those messages, and we can realize things like, you know, the color in the vivid color of the Bernie Kleina's photographs from the 1960s really helps transport us to that period, and we realize it happened not so long ago.
When people see what's going on, they're more responsive. They understand immediately the hurt, the danger that has been imposed on so many people, young people, old people. So I encourage people to keep their cameras in their hands and not in their pockets.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Angel Ito.
In focus, the Chicago Freedom Movement and the fight for fair housing is now open at the Elmhurst Art Museum until June 20th. And up next, the history behind old passenger rail stations in Chicago in an all-new Ask Jeffrey.
Ask Jeffrey is brought to you in part by BMO Harris Bank.
Wow, you ready?
Yeah, let me just grab my wallet.
Uh-oh, I've seen this before. Wallet way too big, skinny jeans too skinny.
I'll just carry it.
Before you break something, you should know you don't actually need a wallet. With BMO Harris, you can just take cash out with your phone. Or if you need to, you can pay them with Zelle.
That works?
Yeah. You're stuck, aren't you?
Smile.
Woo! Those jeans are way too tight.
That feeling you get when no wallet is no big deal. That's the BMO effect.
Chicago's old passenger railroad stations for decades acted as the city's front door, where people from all over the country arrived seeking a better life or just the thrills of the big city. Jeffrey Bayer takes us back to the golden age of rail travel in this week's Ask Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey, good to see you.
Great to see you, Paris.
All right, so we have a question from Larry Gardner of Skokie. He says, could you do a story on the old train stations that once stood in downtown Chicago?
Well, of course we can. There's, as you mentioned, the late 19th century, the early 20th century. This was the golden age of rail travel when people traversed the country on trains. And of course, right at the center there, at the hub of it all, was Chicago. It's hard to believe, but as recently as the 1960s, there were 6 passenger train stations in downtown Chicago. Today, all passenger trains that come into the city from beyond the suburbs go through the last one standing, Union Station, which is now owned by Amtrak. It's Beaux-Arts design, including this now demolished concourse that was right along the river there, and the colonnaded main building, which is still standing right behind it in this picture. Those things recall the grandeur of rail terminals in those glory days, designed to wow the traveler the way many airports do today. That was certainly the goal of another neoclassically designed terminal. Check this one out, owned by the Chicago and Northwestern Railway, very neoclassical Beaux-Arts, and it stood at what is today Ogilvy Transportation Center, which is operated by Metra. That station included ornate concourses, waiting rooms, even dedicated spaces for barbers and hairdressers, you know, people traveling across the country. The Chicago and Northwestern Railway traced its roots to Chicago's very first railroad, the Galena and Chicago Union, established way back in 1848 by Chicago's first mayor, actually, William B. Ogden.
Certainly the golden age of travel there. And then another key player, of course, you hear references in pop culture all the time, the Illinois Central.
Oh, absolutely. That company billed itself as the main line of mid-America, and it was a dominant player both in passenger and freight rail. Their main passenger terminal was called Central Station, and it once stood just south of Grant Park, right on the lakefront there. The railroad built this mammoth terminal in 1893, in part to accommodate the influx of visitors that were expected for the World's Fair that year. You'll notice almost all of these terminals have clocks or clock towers, so people hurrying to catch trains didn't have to fumble around for their pocket watches. That's, of course, if they had watches at all. Central Station was also an important point of entry for many African Americans who came to Chicago from the South during the Great Migration. And like so many of its contemporaries, Central Station met the wrecking ball, in this case in the mid-1970s after Amtrak diverted their trains to Union Station. But there is still an active platform at 11th Street serving the Metro Electric line.
And I would gather it's the inspiration for that residential development around there, Central Station, which I believe Richard M. Daley lived there for a while. And
You're right.
This is not to be confused with Grand Central Station, of course, right?
No, that's right. And yes, we had our own Grand Central Station here in Chicago. So New York's wasn't the only one. Ours was at Harrison and Wells on the western edge of the Loop, right along the river for about 80 years. It was just north of, if you know where River City's development is today. Traffic declined at Grand Central after World War II. This photo with the Board of Trade there in the background was taken in 1967. At the end of the station's life, it was torn down in 1971. And this is one of several places in the city where abandoned railroad land is being redeveloped. During construction of the new development on this old site, buried stones from Grand Central Station were actually unearthed, and they've been repurposed for a river walk. One Chicago train station that actually is still standing, so in addition to Union Station, is Dearborn Station in the South Loop, although of course it's not a train station anymore. And you can see its clock tower visible all the way from the north side of the loop, looking south down on Dearborn. But what happened to the top of that clock tower? Take a look at this early photo and you'll notice it once had this huge wooden Flemish roof on top of it. But in 1922, it caught fire. Look at these incredible photos from the scene as crowds gathered. And luckily, firefighters were able to save the building, but not that tower roof. In the 1970s, most of the train shed was demolished, but the facade and portions of the terminal were preserved as part of a mall serving Printers Row. The building is still called Dearborn Station, and in fact, Paris, as you just pointed out, many old stations live on in the names of new developments. The one you mentioned, Central Station, just south of Grant Park, where Mayor Daley used to live, and then a new apartment building at Harrison and Wells is using the Grand Central name.
The ghosts of Chicago's rail past still around. All right, Jeffrey Bayer, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And don't forget, you can visit our website for more details about Chicago's old passenger rail stations. And while you're there, don't forget to submit your own question to Jeffrey Bayer. And that's all at WTTW.com/AskJeffrey. And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
And you can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And be sure to join us tomorrow night live at 7.
And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz.
And I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning for this program is brought to you by Rob